That's a nice little video that we did just recently in support of our Workforce Development Initiative. Since the economy is all about jobs, fueling the economy, we thought it was an appropriate way to kick us off here for the next segment of our program. We had some really great work done by our marketing team and working with Santa Cruz Business Council and Josie and Robert, so thank you for that. We're going to move into the next part of our program, which is our CEO panel. And I'm kind of calling this View from the Top. What are the issues and challenges, but the good things also that are happening that these amazing leaders that we have in our region can share with us? And what insights can we glean to help all of our organizations thrive? And so I'm going to ask the panel to come up now. We have Lenny Mendonca, who is going to be our moderator. And all the bios are in the program, so I'm not going to go into a lot of gory detail, but Lenny is now running all of the economic development and business development for the state of California. That's a big job. Lenny. So we thought it would be really interesting to have his perspective on moderating this panel from the state level and understanding what our issues are here in the region. I know Lenny from when he was co-chair of the California Forward organization, which is a state-level organization that puts on the Economic Summit every year. So he's a friend of MBEP, and it's nice to have someone of his stature and his brain power working so closely with our governor. And for those of you that don't know, one of our co-founders, Bud Colligan, is now working for Lenny, running all the international trade for the state of California. So wherever Bud is, thank you, Bud, for your service and what you're doing. Next to him is Carrie Birkhofer, who is on our board and CEO of BayFed. There's your fan club. We're really excited to have Carrie here. She's been in a leadership role in our community for quite some time. Next to her is Joe Burton, who is CEO of Poly, which is the new name for Plantronics, post-merger with Polycom. So we have Joe here to share his insights around the tech industry and also being a global company, as well as and then, of course, a lot of you in the room know Bruce Taylor, CEO of Taylor Farms, running an extremely large ag company here in the region and doing a lot of good in the community to boot. So give a nice round of applause for everyone. Lenny, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kate, and really looking forward to this conversation for the next hour or so with this amazing group of business and civic leaders who represent the best of what I think we really are looking for in leaders who walk the talk and engage and lead fantastic organizations and also exercise their steward leadership and civic leadership in a way that is emblematic of what the best leaders do and very much what I think the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership does. So will be an exciting time to have this conversation. Let me just say two or three things to frame this, and then really I'm going to yield most of the time to our panelists because they have a lot to say, and that's what we should be doing. The first thing I'd like to say is thank you for lending Bud to the state for a while. Bud is an amazingly accomplished leader and also someone who has a real public spirit about him, and the fact that he's willing to pack up and spend some time working on these important international issues for the state along with the Lieutenant Governor is fantastic, and it's just a delight to work with Bud. So thank you for lending him to us. The second thing I'd like to say is that I would like to put an exclamation point on everything that Bruce Katz said. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. I am a charter member of the Bruce Katz fan club. We've had the opportunity to work together in different places around the country, and one of the great things about Bruce, as you saw when he spoke, is he speaks truth to power and also recognizes that the power is in our communities and that we need to take that power and run with it. And Bruce, if you ever have a chance to, in addition to hear him, to work with him, you're privileged because he really has an experience set and a really on-the-ground way to connect what really works. So I would strongly encourage you, as I'm sure you are, to take everything he said, write it down and say, let's go do that here. Don't wait for anybody to give you permission, whether it's Sacramento or Washington, D.C. or anywhere else. So thank you, Bruce. And then finally, I'd like to say I particularly appreciate Bruce's last comment. As the owner of a brewing company in Half Moon Bay, I strongly encourage you to find someone you don't know and have a beer with them, particularly a high-quality craft beer. So thank you, Bruce. All right, with that, let's have a serious and engaged conversation here. We're delighted that Carrie, Joe, and Bruce could join us to have a conversation around what's working well in the economy in the region, how are they engaged in it as leaders, what are some of the challenges that are facing us, how do we think about this complex economy and economic environment, particularly since trees don't grow to the sky, and at some point it's not going to be all rosy, and what are we going to do about that? And then let's get real about, as Bruce said, if we're going to take responsibility for all this, what do we need to do, and how do we not talk about it but do it? And so with that, let me start with asking each of our panelists just to give us a little bit, not their bio, because that's in the document, but just in your leadership role in your organization, what are you wrestling with now, and how does what's going on in the region affect what it is that you're trying to accomplish? So Carrie, you want to start?
Sure. So I'm the CEO at Bay Federal Credit Union, which is started originally in Santa Cruz County, and now we're also serving Monterey and San Benito counties. We are consumer-based, so it's people join the credit union to get their financial services, and they're actually an owner of the credit union. So we are there to serve their needs. The credit union has grown since it started 60 years ago, from literally the 8 school teachers at Santa Cruz High that put $5 on a table and said, let's start a credit union, to $1 billion in assets we just hit this quarter. So we're really excited. Thank you. We have about 75,000 members, so we represent the region pretty well. And I've been there almost 30 years. It'll be 30 years in July. So I've seen the community go through a lot. I moved here literally 2 months before the '89 earthquake. And so I saw a lot of rebuild, and kind of what Bruce Katz was talking about is that sometimes it takes a crisis for a community to respond. And so we saw Santa Cruz and the region really go through a regrowth and a visioning during that process. And then most recently, the last 10 years ago, with the deep recession that hit really hard in this community, the credit union felt it as well because it hit the consumers hard, so it hit us hard. And so we went through a lot of rebuilding, kind of re-engineering as we went through it, making changes that we had to make to adjust so that we would still be here, and also help the people in this community get through it. So before the Fed ever came to us and said, here's the TARP program to help redo a mortgage, we created our own program within Bay Federal within a month or two of starting to see the crisis. So I think it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, is take action when you need to and make it work for your community. And so we survived it, and we actually thrived through that process. We learned a lot along the way, and now the growth has just really taken off, and we just opened a branch in Salinas with the merger of Coastal Credit Union. So we're excited to serve that region more, and I'm just really looking forward to where we go from today, because being part of MBEP, the reason I got excited about it was because I've seen a lot of people talk, but I felt like MBEP was actually starting to do more. And what I'm really excited about is learning more about the opportunity zones and what we can do as a community financial institution. We're actually a community development financial institution. We haven't leveraged that title very much, but it's a special designation by the Treasury, and there is some opportunities to work with the opportunity zone. So overall, I feel really energized today. I think right now the consumers are pretty healthy, except for some pockets, lower income, obviously homelessness, we have housing issues, but we're seeing strong savings growth that coming out of the recession. It's back up to levels where people are saving again. The debt per consumer has come down. But there's also a lot of economic activity happening in our community. We're doing auto loans, we're financing homes, and there's real strong activity in those areas. So there's a part of our economy that's definitely growing and healthy, kind of like the good that Kate said. And then I look forward to working with the community on the harder issues.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Joe, you're in a very different business. But,
Indeed.
Would love to hear a little bit more about kind of what's the situation at Poly, and what are you seeing, because you've got both a touch locally and connected to technology and globally.
Yeah, you bet. So Poly is a about a $2 billion a year technology company that started as Plantronics here in Santa Cruz. We're a little younger than the credit union. We're only 57 years old.
Okay.
But nevertheless,
We're growing at the same time.
but nevertheless, founded in Santa Cruz 57 years ago by two airline pilots, built the world's first lightweight headsets, and then actually literally went to the moon and back. Neil Armstrong's words about 50 years ago here in a month were said over a Plantronics that was actually built in Santa Cruz, so that's pretty cool. There's some bragging rights for you.
Yeah, that's really
Indeed, for the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Poly has become a fascinating company. About a year ago, Plantronics bought Polycom, which Plantronics was headsets, Polycom are phones, video conferencing and such. So we now have this really interesting company that's every piece of technology you use to communicate. And more importantly, it's the technology that touches your body. You know, it's deeply intimate. You wear it around your neck, you put it in your ear, you're seen with it. So in addition to being technology, it's part of your sense of style and aspiration and identity. So there's a fashion aspect of it as well. So a little bit of what we see as Poly is 7,500 workers worldwide, about 550 of them here in Santa Cruz County. So lots and lots of things are on our mind. I mean, we have a factory with 2,500 people in Mexico. So clearly NAFTA replacement, border issues are very, very important to us. We do some manufacturing and a lot of sales in China. So obviously that's deeply interesting to us. So a lot of global issues that we pay attention to that are probably no different than you would read about from another company. The real issues for us on the local level that we think a lot about is we try to be very involved in the community, right? So we're involved in, obviously, Second Harvest Food Bank, with the hospital, with many other organizations. But as Poly, there's a really unique set of workers that we need. Because we build wearable technology, it tends to be miniaturized. It tends to have a strong human factors piece to it. So finding people that know design, that are very into kind of the man-machine interface in a non-creepy way, nevertheless, finding great writers, great marketeers. I mean, we need these people. The interesting thing with Santa Cruz County is this divide from Silicon Valley. If there are people that want to live in Santa Cruz County, want to live at the beach, they're big mountain bikers, whatever, man, are we the employer of choice, okay? Getting people to drive the hill is okay, but then they're driving the hill, right? I mean, they're not really fully engaged in the community. And by the way, I fit into that as well right now. I currently live just across the hill. But we have this interesting conundrum we're always in of how do we grow the number of people with the skills that we need that want to be in Santa Cruz County? And this comes back to all the things we all talk about. Affordable housing, safety, roads, and so forth. So I think as Poly, really the big deal for us is all of the issues we all talk about in the community that can make this a place where dozens and hundreds of more workers with the kind of skills that we need want to be. And how do we create something with the universities and such where we're actually feeding the local people? We don't just want people to move here. We'd like to hire people from here. So those are probably the big issues for us.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. From Santa Cruz to the moon and back. That's great.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
That's
So,
impressive.
Bruce, in addition to having in touch with the ground, literally, you also have a real sense and a connection to not just this community, but the global world as well, given the nature of the businesses that you're in. So what are you seeing, and what's your sense of what the situation is?
Thanks, Lenny. It's interesting in that we operate, I think I started the company 24 years ago after I got fired from my first job. So it's been okay since then. At this point, we operate businesses in, I think, 18 or 20 cities around the country, and including a couple cities in Mexico. And what you see when you move around the country, Bruce talked about some different centers of excellence. What we see are a number of cities that fail. And you've really got kind of the country morphing into a have and have not situation, it feels like. The big cities are getting bigger, the rural communities are challenged, and we're a series of rural communities really here in Monterey and Santa Cruz County. And so it really became clear to me that if we don't invest in our local community, it has every opportunity to fade away. And so that's why we got engaged with MBEP. Of our 20,000 employees around the country, 5,000 are here in Monterey County. And it's our headquarters, it's probably the highest profit operations we have in the country. And so it's important to us and to our livelihood and to our success going forward that we help this community be vibrant. And so that's why we continue to invest in the community. And many of you can do the same thing. So we had an opportunity to build a new headquarters, for example. And we were on the edge of town outside of Salinas, and it was easy to just stay there and do something there. And then I realized, well, if downtown is going to fail, then the whole community is at risk of failing. And so we made the commitment to build downtown. So we bought that's another story, bought a parking lot and put our headquarters downtown. And so I think we've helped as a catalyst for the regeneration of life in downtown Salinas. As an aside, I will tell you, because I'm sure you're going to ask about challenges down the road, and you're talking about housing, and someone may ask the question, well, as Kate said, there's just an amazing shortage of housing. Well, it's because we collectively as a community and as a series of legislators have put roadblocks in the way. When we decided to build our headquarters in downtown Salinas, there was a parking lot across from the Steinbeck Center that had been a parking lot for 10 years because the buildings had fallen down in the earthquake of '89, I guess it was. And so Jerry Brown was getting rid of the redevelopment districts, and so I knew that this property needed to be disposed of, if you will, and so I sent an email to the city of Salinas, and I said, I'll pay you the highest price per square foot of any property in the city of Salinas. I want no tax benefits. I want no financial help from you. We'll pay you all cash, and we'll close on Friday.
And other than that,
I thought it was a pretty clear offer. And swear to God, the former head of economic development in the city of Salinas called me all excited. He goes, Bruce, this is the most fantastic news I've had. He says, we can probably get this done in a year. A year, right? We laugh, but you think about it, it took 9 months. It took 9 months to buy a parking lot. And so those are the kind of impediments that we have chosen to put in place. And those are the kind of impediments we have to choose to remove if we're going to be serious about addressing some of the issues.
thank you. It's nice to hear a story about it's not paving over a parking lot like the old song went, but it's actually putting up a building. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Didn't take out a tree. We were good.
And how's that going? Just to follow up on in terms of the.
It's gone really well. Our people love being downtown. You know, it's kind of back to this big city draw for millennials. So they love kind of being downtown. There's 20 different restaurant options as opposed to getting your car and go find a place to eat or bring your own lunch. One of the interesting things also was Starbucks is a customer of ours, and so we said, well, let's put a Starbucks. We'll go be a license for Starbucks in our building, and we thought that was a great idea. We went to Seattle and pitched it, and they said, no, there's nobody down here. They said, you can't have a Starbucks. And I said, well, that's why I want a Starbucks, so we can draw people down here. And they said, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to have the people first, then we'll let you do a Starbucks. And so my wife, Linda, we had 7 trips to Seattle to talk Starbucks. We're counting like the homeless at the bus station as people in downtown Salinas that might be prospective coffee drinkers to finally get a Starbucks in downtown Salinas. And the reason I wanted that is to me, and again, a lot of people don't like Starbucks because it's corporate and big and all that, but to me, it offered a sense, an indication of legitimacy. And so we didn't have that in downtown Salinas. Why would you come to downtown Salinas? People were scared, right? Because they hear it, they read the paper, all that. They were afraid. And so by putting Starbucks down there, it gives people a sense of comfort, and so it's really worked well.
That's great.
That's been great.
Congratulations. Look forward to a cup of Starbucks
There you
in
go.
downtown Salinas. So,
I'll treat you, Lenny.
okay. Let me shift the topic just a little bit, and then I want to get into the region. So one of the things that Kate asked when we were having this panel is to talk a little bit about the economic outlook and how we're thinking about that, and in particular, how do you think about a downturn and when might that come? And I'll say a couple things to frame that in and ask each of you what you're seeing and then how you're thinking about it. At the state level, and what we're saying is there is no possible way to predict a downturn. Economists have great models that predict all of the last recessions after the fact. And so there's no way to predict it. Having said that, we're in the longest economic expansion in post-World War II, and it's been growth in employment in all of that time period. And that's fantastic, and we hope it continues for at least the next 8 years when this governor's governor. But things don't last forever. And at least the way we think about that is you need to have a budget that's resilient no matter what happens. And so what we're really aggressively trying to say is that we are going to use this opportunity when things seem to be going well to make sure that we're doing investments that are one-time investments, not adding to an ongoing commitment that you're going to have to cut in the next downturn, and also using that opportunity to help build up reserves, pay down debt, clean up the state's balance sheet to make sure that we're in a position that we don't have to go through anything that we went through before. The LA Times asked Governor Newsom at a meeting, "Are you as fiscally conservative as Jerry Brown?" And he said no, and then paused for effect and said, "I'm more conservative than Jerry Brown." He's actually putting more of the budget increase into one time than Jerry Brown did. And it's really important. There's so much opportunity to spend money that you don't have. And so making sure that we are doing everything in a disciplined way and trying to catalyze things that are important, like priority investments in early childhood education. We're trying to catalyze housing construction. If we've got resources, do them that are things that are really investments and use them to catalyze activity. So that's how we're thinking about it. I'm not going to predict when there's a recession, and if I predict it and I'm right, I'm going to go, God, that was great, I was right. And if I'm wrong, you're going to say you were wrong. So what's the point? Just be ready no matter what happens. So what are you seeing, Carrie?
Well, kind of similar. We keep thinking that, beginning of this year was there will be a recession. Then it's like, well, maybe there won't be a recession. Wow, GDP's greatest quarter, just happened. So we're seeing, some definite strong economic news still coming out. But there's underlying things under it that we have to pay attention to. And for us locally, we, like I said, learned a lot in the last recession. We learned that we need to be kind of the stewards of people's budgets when they come to us to ask for a loan. So we're looking closely at their ability to pay, what their disposable income is, and we have to turn people down at times. And so that's the next level that we take it, is that financial education level. How can we teach in our branches online, help people understand how to live within their means and how to invest wisely as a person, just like the state, like what you mentioned about how the state should invest. And so we're taking that seriously. We work closely with people. We also go into the schools and teach financial education. We have a simulation program called Bite of Reality, where high school students go through this program. In the Santa Cruz City schools, the seniors are required to take it before they graduate, which I think is great because we offer it for free and we get to go in there and they get to create a budget. And it's the way it's structured is it's real life. They have a persona, they have an income, they have to get all their needs met. They go to each of the tables. Everyone at the table is there to sell them transportation and housing. And we try to upsell them because that's what's the real world. And so then they break their budget and they have to go to the credit union table and figure out how to get back in line. And it's much easier to turn your car back in that simulation than to voluntarily return it to the credit union and say, I can't pay it anymore, which we have people do at times. So But the good news is we are in a good place. The credit union's delinquencies and losses are the lowest they've been since probably 2005. So we're really happy to see that the economy or our area is doing well right now. But it makes you pause and think, let's not overextend ourselves and continue to live within your budget as a consumer, as a business, build your reserves, build the resiliency of your employees, make them the best marketers for you, because they're really the ones that keep your business thriving during downturns. So look at all the things that, a whole bunch of things you have to do to keep planning for the future as well.
That's great. Thank you. Joe, what are you seeing?
Well, as very much as you said, Lenny, I am not going to sit up here and predict or not predict a downturn. Nevertheless, as Polly, obviously we're looking at both the local market, the national market, the global market, both as where we sell into, and the 20 or so major communities that we employ within. So there's kind of two different dynamics there. Net, a little bit like you said, I think at the beginning of the year, we might have been a little bit more concerned about a downturn. Net, while there's always soft pockets here and there that move around, we're not seeing broad indicators. Nevertheless, also, as you said, not a lot of disagreement here. Nothing lasts forever. We are very, very cognizant of the fact that things will soften on a broader basis at some point. And businesses like ours in particular, almost always when there is a significant softening of a year or so and then it turns back up, the products, the marketing campaigns, the customers on the back end are substantially different than on the front end. So you don't just pause your growth plan and then hit resume later and everything's fine. So lots and lots of little bit of a rainy day fund, little bit of assuming that this will happen sometime in the foreseeable future. I doubt if you'll get the whole 8 years you asked for, Lenny, but we'll see. And a lot of scenario planning around how the economy will change during that downturn, how consumers will change, how the future of work will change. A huge driver for our company is how office buildings are built, utilized, the move to open work, open floor plans, or even to remote workers. So a lot of scenario planning around when this downturn happens, how long will it be, and what will consumers and businesses look like on the back end, and how do we change our business to be a part of that?
That's great.
Yeah.
Sounds very sensible. Bruce, what are you seeing?
Lenny, for us, the fresh vegetable market is a completely free market, if you will, supply and demand, and no price controls, no government price supports. So we can create a downturn in the best of times by growing too much product. And we do that periodically. Interestingly enough, the best years that the growers had were the drought years, when there wasn't enough water to go around, so you only grew what you knew you could sell. You didn't grow any extra. And so the markets during that 3-year period of time were fantastic. Then it rained. And we got back to normal. For us, we're in the food business, and the good thing about being in the food business is people eat every day, no matter what the economy's doing, right? They're not going to give up a meal. And so in 2008, we pretty much sailed right through it without too much slowing down. Actually, some of the restaurants we service didn't want to hire the staff to prepare their vegetables, so our business actually accelerated a bit during that period of time, which is almost counterintuitive, I think. So I fully expect to continue to grow for the rest of my career. So I'm an optimist. The economy might pause a bit, but I think we're in pretty good shape. I guess one of the issues for us to think about is where that growth is going to occur. And so that's one of the things that's changing here. So if you look at the Salinas Valley, kind of the home of ag, and you look at some of the headwinds we're facing in ag, part of the industry is moving across the border to Mexico. And driven by policy, driven by state policy, federal policy, lack of people, cost of people, and the customers don't appear to be willing to pay more money. They're all afraid of Amazon at the retail level, and they don't want to pay us any more for what we do. So tremendous pressure to get costs under control. So that's I guess that would be the risk I would see in terms from a downturn perspective, from a state perspective, is the industry will continue to grow and continue to be healthy. Where will that industry be producing its product?
Okay, so people are going to continue to eat. It's a question about where they get it from.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Well, one of the things that, since we've all been through the prior downturns in leadership positions, it is important to remember that downturns do come, but upturns come back afterwards. So being prepared and doing what you need to do in advance to make sure that you're ready, and then remember when you're in it, when everyone's thinking it's going to be a downturn forever, continuing to look about what's going forward. So thank you. Right. Let's talk a little bit. I don't want to dwell on it, but there are things that are getting in the way that are self-inflicted wounds about the success of the region, the success of the economy. If we could say the people in this room are the people who are going to decide the future of what those things that are getting in the way of our success are, and we're going to collectively decide, and then we're just not going to wait for somebody else to tell us it's okay, we're going to do it, and then tell them what they need to do to enable us. If you're going to do that, what's the top of your list of things that the region should say, let's not talk about this anymore, let's do something about it? What's at the top of your list? I don't mean to keep coming to you first, Carrie, so why don't we flip the order?
Okay.
They'll give you a chance. Bruce, do you mind going first?
Well, there was two different questions there. So the second question was a little different. Let's stop talking about this. Our industry tends to be one that moves quickly, and if we need to, we ask for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. At the same time, I think my uncle, who was an attorney years ago, counted, I think it was 82 different government agencies that farmers had to deal with over the course of the year to grow their crop. And so that's continued to get worse. And I say worse in terms of regulations. And most of these new laws that are passed in Sacramento, I mean, there's a logic to them. I mean, it's, you don't want people to be working out in the field when it's 100 degrees. You want to provide certain benefits. There's a logic to it. So that's why they get passed. The downside is it adds another layer of administration and complexity. And so, for example, if you give someone, you have to give them a half-hour lunch break. It's unpaid. But now you have to document that you gave them the half-hour lunch break unpaid. So now you have to have time cards and all that. And so you have to start to operate in defensive mode. And that just, what that really does is, one, it makes you operate your business differently. But kind of the negative impact is it really makes it difficult for small businesses to survive and thrive. They don't have that same sophistication to be able to make sure they're doing all these rules that they're supposed to be adhering to. And so I think that's a negative. That's a problem. I mean, to me, agriculture, we'd love it to be smaller farms. Realistically, you can't afford to be a smaller farm in the Monterey County today. It's just not economically viable because of the different costs associated with it. So I'd say that's one of the issues. Back to the second part of your question is, there is incredible power, as Bruce said, in this room to get things done. And part of what, in my sense, is Bruce says the federal government's never really stepped up and kind of been the one you go to. My sense over the last 20 years is people starting to look to the federal government for solution. And I don't think we used to do that. And I think that it's in our interest not to do that, right? Whether it's the federal government or the state government. I mean, we have the resources to pay our own way to do what we want to do here. We just need the collective wisdom and the collective will to do it together. So that's the opportunity I see.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, so the issues that we see kind of getting in our way are obviously a little bit different in that we have less workers. We're much more in the information economy, a few hundred highly skilled people working inside the building, if you will. If I were to rank the things that get in our way of attracting more of those people, keeping more of those people, having them be even more deeply engaged, other than the things inside the company. Number one would be housing, for sure. We just have an incredibly difficult time attracting the fresh out of school type people and having them have a decent place to live. So housing would be number one. Transportation broadly would be number three. So I'll come back to number two. Transportation would be number 3, of course, and it's roads, it's bike lanes, it's some sort of mass transit. They're kind of worried about all of it. Number 2 is a deeply fascinating one for us. Plantronics is right at US 1 and US 9, so I think you know where I'm going to go here for those in the area. The homeless challenge is an incredibly complex issue for the Plantronics Poly employees. They deeply, deeply, deeply care. It's not just a not in my, not where I can see it, please move it someplace else. It's a how the heck do we actually make progress on it? And yet at the same time, it does impact them. Right now it is over-rotated near our campus, and less people are comfortable going for walks. Less people are comfortable going and riding their bike. Less people are comfortable walking to lunch. That does impact our ability as an employer of choice. So on one hand, our employees want to give, they really want to make progress on this, but it actually impacts the psyche of the company considerably. So I think it is a big challenge for us right now.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's the reality and the, put it on the table.
For sure. I mean, our employees understand, like I said, the idea of moving this to the other side of town so they don't have to look at it is not what they're looking for. Right. They're looking for how do we actually make a dent in this.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Carrie, what do you?
I don't have too many to add. I think you covered a lot of it, but it's similar for us with we hire people right out of school as well, and some have not gone to college, so it's very entry level. They're usually living at home still, or they're moving out into, we have employees that live together. We have employees that get married, so we have a very collegial environment.
That's one way to
they
describe
like
it.
each other.
Okay.
Lenny, the beer must be good there.
And people want to stay. We have a culture where we attract people and they enjoy giving back to the community and they're very invested in the community. But we also have like our River Street branch that, we had someone come in recently that was scary. They had a stick, they were looking for their purple dragon and they were hitting things and the employees had to handle it and make sure the members were okay. And so I kind of got to that level of being fed up and reached out and asked, city officials, like, what can I do? Like, it's the same question, what can I do? And the response was, which I understand is, contact the state and the federal government. And so at the time, I was like, okay, I do that for my credit union. I'm an advocate. I go, to Washington, D.C. I'm going to do that. But it kind of fell flat. Like, isn't there something else we can do? So today, I feel really energized after listening to some of the discussions we've had. I think there's more that we can do as a community. And so I look forward to what's next.
That's great. Thank you. So we're unfortunately relatively quickly running out of time, but I want to do a quick lightning round of what is your one takeaway from today that you'd say this group ought to do? So if you just had to pick, and Joe, since I didn't get you to go first, I'm going to put you on the spot to go first.
Sure.
But you went to the moon, so this is easy. So,
the thing I heard from Bruce that was so amazing and really resonated with me was, don't start at the moon, start right here. So I loved the look as close to your own front door as possible. The idea that, I should try and take this on, and if I need help, then I should reach across to Carrie, and then we should do it as a community. Don't be looking to Sacramento or Washington. Now, if there's anything Sacramento can do, feel free. But
you can join us.
But nevertheless, I thought that really resonated and energized me. I think we need to come together and do that.
fantastic. Thank you. Carrie.
I learned that we're going to all have beer together, so that's what my biggest takeaway is, and I'm already looking forward to it. We'll even drive up to Half Moon Bay, so we'll meet you there. But seriously, I think I already mentioned, like, having that local, I think MBEP is positioned for this, and I'm excited to see where we go with it.
Great. Bruce.
I guess it's a tough one. It's a little bit of change of direction. So if I look at our competition, from Taylor Farms' perspective, our probably largest competitor is Dole Food Company, who is based in Los Angeles today, probably going to be based in Charlotte in a couple of years, and will be owned by an Irish public company. Fresh Express was bought by Chiquita, who was bought by a Brazilian family. ReadyPack was just bought by a French family. Earthbound Farm was owned by Danone out of Paris. And Man Packing just sold to Del Monte, which is controlled by a family out of Lebanon. And so if you talk about local control, we're losing it, right? Realistically, we're losing it today. And so how do we start to do some of these things that Bruce is suggesting we do if we don't have all the levers in our control? And the downside of that is that a lot of the administrative jobs go out of the area. So we've kind of, you take that step backwards. And so to me, the solution is stop selling, right? And so we bought one of those companies back 2 weeks ago, so we did our part. So we're and I'm out of money, so I can't buy the rest of them. So someone else in this room has to be helpful here to get some of these companies back under local control. And I think that would be good for all of us.
That's great. Well, I hate to say that we're at the end of the time, but just to reinforce a few things that you heard today, local control. You know, a lot of things are in our control. How do we take control? And secondly, don't delegate problems up. Force up to help respond and be enabling your success. I mean, it is, as Bruce said, it is so countercultural to think that that's not what we do, but to be able to say, we actually have to force upper levels to say, no, your job is to help enable our success. Your job is not to tell us what to do. You know, when you have average policies across a state as big as California, that means they're wrong for everyone. So what we need is more local control, but local control that actually says you have responsibility for things too. So local control on housing doesn't mean I like housing except nowhere near me. It means you actually have to live up to that obligation, and one of the roles that we can play is to help ensure that people live up to that obligation. The governor sued the city of Huntington Beach, and as a former governor, he said, as a former mayor, he said, I hate suing mayors, but like Ted Knight in my favorite movie, Caddyshack, he said, I felt I owed it to you. And he brought the other mayors who were out of compliance into the room and said, listen, I don't want to do this, but I will. And they walked away and said, thank you. And they said thank you because they needed the cover to do what they knew was right. And so we're there to help ensure that there's that cover and the incentives for things like linking transportation to housing dollars. But ultimately, the choice about housing is a local decision. And so if housing's the number one issue, and it's not disconnected from homelessness as well, because people are homeless in the first instance because they don't have a home, we need more housing. And we're really serious about that. So I'm delighted to hear the enthusiasm around that. Okay, so we've got some time for Q&A. And so the wandering mic will point as
Yes,
it's
we
dark
do
here.
have time. Thank you to our panel. We're going to have at least 10 minutes worth of questions. We wanted to ensure that you all had some time
now I can see.
to pose your questions to this panel, so we have mic runners.
And please state your name so we know who you are.
Hi, Manu Koenig, Santa Cruz County Greenway. My question, I guess, is specifically for Joe, but all of you. You mentioned housing and attracting talent is your number one concern. If local zoning laws allowed it, would you build housing at the Poly campus?
It's a good question. I would not be against it. We don't, without reconfiguring the buildings, right now we don't have extra real estate there, but would we be open to some sort of a partnership, or we helped put the land in place, help to get it done? Yeah, we would. That's not a firm commitment that we'll do it no matter what, but would we be open to doing something that made sense? Absolutely.
Sounds like an opportunity for a conversation over a beer.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yes, I can't tell where the mic is. Okay, yes, please.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for the businesses that you've brought to our region. Allison Shelley, Monterey Peninsula College. I just wanted to ask a question. So what do the panelists feel about bringing a living wage to Monterey County? I believe the living wage is something like $26 an hour. And I know that we have a statewide, I believe, living wage. We're trying to get to $15 an hour. So I just wanted to hear the panel's thoughts on this, because we can't bring prosperity to our region unless people can actually afford to live here at the very base. And the living wage is basic. Thank
Who
you.
wants to?
I'm happy to talk about that. We believe that as well, and it's so hard to see bringing in entry-level people, and we have a lot of them at coming in, working at that beginning level, and then growing in the organization. How to move them quickly up. So we've increased the hourly wage, and we at the same time, in order to make it fair, every employee through the manager level also got a $1 an hour increase. So that was January 1. So we're just trying really hard to budget that in every year until we can get it to a higher, more sustainable level for this region. But it does make the costs higher. And so one of the flip sides of it that we're seeing also is a lot of changes in technology. Things that are coming that I was going to mention that we should all be looking at is artificial intelligence, and maybe that's a whole nother conversation of how it's going to affect jobs and how it's going to affect the region when jobs change as a result of it. But there's things that we're doing now that are becoming more efficient as an organization, so we have less employees, so we could pay the employees there more. It doesn't help with job creation, but perhaps in other areas, like we have data scientists, they're not really scientists yet, but they're studying our data, and it's a new position, and they're earning more money. So there's opportunities to grow as a career with the credit union, and hopefully in the region. But I think we all have responsibility to look at that and how to create the revenue to support that.
Okay. Don't have to do everyone on the panel for every question, but does anybody else want to respond?
I'm happy to. I guess I'll say the unpopular thing, which living wage in part is a political construct. So if you go around the world, the living wage is a lot different than $26 an hour. So someone's deciding what that basket of goods needs to be in that basket to be considered living. So, and someone's making that choice. That being said, for us in our business today in Monterey County, if we had a $26 minimum wage, we wouldn't have a business. And so that wouldn't be good for us. We'd have a business in Mexico. We wouldn't have a business here in Monterey County. So what we're doing as wages are going up in the state of California, both because of the state laws in effect, but also because of the shortage of labor, which drives up, the market is driving up the cost of labor. We're moving towards more automation. And so the good news is that the jobs that we have left will be higher paying jobs that require better education, better training. The bad news is there won't be entry-level jobs for people to start out anymore. And my fear there is it sounds great, it sounds like we're doing the right thing, but you look at Italy, for example, it has 40% youth unemployment. There's a reason they have that, right? They have that because of the laws they put in place. And so I toured a pasta factory in Parma, Italy, 5-6 years ago, and they have their plant with 13 huge spaghetti and pasta making machines, one person running each machine. It all goes into a warehouse to ship to their customers. And there's 2 identical warehouses. I said, why do you have 2? He says, well, in one we have 50 people with forklifts and racks and all that shipping out today. I said, what's in the other one? He says, robots. And there's nobody in there. And so as the 50 retire, the functions move across to the new warehouse. So there won't be any job. So that's the risk. I mean, it sounds great. It's good for, if people could make more money, that'd be good for the economy, it'd be good for everybody. The challenge is, how do you build an economy with that structure?
So can I just add a couple things to that from at least how thinking about at the state level? First of all, living wage is partly determined by the cost of living. And so really focusing on housing is a big deal because that lowers the cost required to be able to afford to live. The second thing is there's another lever we have. We're really aggressively encouraging and expanded in one-time money with the earned income tax credit to encourage investment, that encouraging people to work and get the opportunities. And the final thing, the governor announced yesterday on May Day, the formation of a Future of Work Commission that will be in an executive order. There's an editorial in the Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, about this tomorrow that is a forward-looking view about where work is going, not to predict it, but to have a broad public conversation about the future of work and how we ensure that there are attractive jobs going forward. A lot of that is going to happen first in California than it does in other places in the world, and we shouldn't be scared of it. but we should be aware of it and ensure that the pace of which we react to it is commensurate with the pace of the technological change. And this will be a broad, public engaged process over the next several months, so look for more on that shortly as we try and not be scared about the robot apocalypse, which there is not one. It's about how do we ensure that we have skills and technologies that work together to help ensure that everyone has an opportunity to earn a great living going forward. So I think we have time for one more question. Nope, I guess I got told we have to stop. All right. I know we could have this conversation all day, and okay, great. That's what happens when you try and wrap up. You get a chance for one more. The boss
Just
says we got
shows
one more.
things can happen locally.
There we go. There we go. Just take the mic and start talking.
Tom Harvey here with Bloom Distillation. I had wanted to ask Bruce Katz a question and didn't get to that, but I think Bruce Taylor is the perfect gentleman to answer this.
Questions for Bruce.
Yeah, it's
Just
a Bruce
Bruce.
question.
Go ahead.
It's particularly about the assets of this area, and we look at waste repurposing, food waste repurposing, energy development. We look at regenerative ag as some of the benefits of our business, and it seems to me, looking at Bruce Katz's model, where all of these cities are finding unique fits and unique focuses for the intelligence and energy of the community. Bruce, do you think we can have the Silicon Valley of regenerative ag and food waste production, or food production, let's say, that would make this area really outstanding? And I believe the farming intelligence is here, the technology and interest is here, but I'd love to hear your answer on that.
Yeah. Do I believe we can get there? Absolutely. To me, it doesn't really matter your opinion on global warming. To me, it's why wouldn't you do what you can do today to do less of it, right? So we don't have to argue about whether it's real or not. Let's just do less of it. And so at Taylor Farms, we're trying to look at every source of energy, for example, that we can figure out. So we put in a Bloom Energy, the version 1 5 years ago, and now we're putting in a 4 megawatt version 5 system in our plant in Salinas. We added solar in 3 of our California, actually we have solar in 7 of our California operations. We put in a wind turbine down in Gonzales, you probably saw that. The local farmers there volunteered. I live in Corral de Terra, and they volunteered to put a wind turbine in Corral de Terra for me. So there's always a pushback there. And then we were the first to put in a cogeneration facility in Gonzales too. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, and our next project is how do we take our waste and generate that into biogas, right? So we're trying to get off the grid. If we can get our production systems off the grid. I mentioned we just bought Earthbound Farm. One of the things we're looking at there is, can we make that entire farming operation carbon neutral, right? Can we get it to biodiesel in the tractors that actually grow the product and harvest the product? Can we then get a carbon neutral production system in our processing facilities? So it's a work in progress. But to me, why wouldn't we be committed to going in that direction? That's where we're headed.
That's fantastic. It's a very wonderful way. It's a wonderfully concrete way to say that's an example of what you could be doing. It's a distinctive asset here. So that's very exciting. So once again, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with this terrific group of leaders, Bruce, Joe, and Carrie. I had a friend of mine who's the former chair of Common Cause used to say, we are the leaders we have been waiting for, and we are the leaders in this room and in this panel. So thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our great leaders here in the region for that conversation. I know it could have gone on for another hour easily, but appreciate that. Gives good food for thought. So what we're going to do now is shift gears a little bit, turn the lights up. That's great.